Hey yo, this is Gene from New York City. How y'all doing? I thought I'd start the video by addressing this tweet here from my man's Anime. Video comms open. He says, any ladies on the TL who, I'm assuming TL means timeline, right? Can do a New Jersey or a New York accent and are interested in doing a little voice acting. Well, I don't really know what voice acting is. I mean, I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised in Queens, been all around the boroughs and most of the neighborhoods at least once. So we all sound a little different. But hey, my accent is my accent. I speak how I speak, I am who I am, and I be who I be. Now, I don't know what you mean by an accent. It's like, do you mean like the stereotypical, hey, I'm walking here, kind of like tough guy New York accent? Because most of us don't actually speak that way anymore. So, but really, seriously, all jokes aside, um, I don't know, let me know. Or, eh? I can't do, or at least I'm not very good at accents, but my voice is my voice. I've born and raised in New York, as Taz would say, New York born, New York bred. When I die, I'll be New York dead. So I guess I could. I don't know if I can answer A because I don't quite know what type of New York accent you're looking for. But I guess we could talk. Let a girl know, let a sister know. But anyway, that's my best impression of a New York accent. But anyhow, and again, I'm just like goofing around. No, no, it's all love. That's what I'm trying to say. It's all love, right? But anyway, to get to the video, the actual point of the video, outside of my spontaneous, I guess, voice acting audition for anime here, um, I've been seeing on Twitter some of the reactions to this thing about King Valkyrie, right? King Valkyrie, right? Apparently, that's how Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie character in the MCU is going to be referred to as a king, right? In the upcoming Thor Love and Thunder, I believe it's called, film. And the sort of general response or general consensus that I've seen is, people generally not agreeing with it. And let's see here. We have this tweet from I Love Animation, right? So I think this is a good place to start, right? Because he quote tweeted, or they, I don't know what gender they are, but I Love Animation quote tweeted me because what I had said was, what had happened was, let's get back here, right? So this is what I said when I saw this, right? It says here that Valkyrie is officially being called King Valkyrie in Thor Love and Thunder. And like I was saying, the general response has been, fairly negative, at least from what I've seen on Twitter, amongst the people that I follow, right? It's like, why does she have to be called a king? Why can't she be a queen? Now, I said that, as you can see here, I'm not bothered by the gender bending element, but I am curious as to why she would want to be called king rather than queen. So I can't exactly say I'm like immediately upset as some people seem to be, which is their right, right? But let me go back. Right, so you get a few responses here, right? And let me go back to this one, right? I love animation, quote tweeted me, which is fine, right? It's Twitter, people are gonna quote tweet you. Says, this is why I despise modernization in social media. At this point, the LGBTQ community puts so much unnecessary genders, pronouns that you can't even make sense of things anymore. Seriously, there is and always will be only two genders, male and female, king and queen, prince and princess. And I said that I was now going to have to make a video explaining myself because for a variety of reasons, gender and gender roles and gender norms aren't something I'm attached to, right? And there was a tweet also, I think, by Crimson Sin, who's also quote tweeted me. But let me try to just respond to this first. I want to be clear. This is not meant in any way to be offensive or to call anyone out, right? This is just me sharing my viewpoint for whatever it is. And to share my viewpoint, I need to sort of explain myself, explain how I relate to gender and gender norms and then gender terms or titles like king or queen or anything like that, right? First of all, I am a tomboy, in case you haven't noticed. That term in and of itself is incredibly masculine, right? And it has long been used to describe masculine leaning women, right? Women who are into dude stuff, right? So, on that alone, especially in the modern day, I'm a bit of a gender bender. Not necessarily in my appearance, though I would say I do lean generally, uh, let's say, if not masculine, then at least unfeminine. Especially when I was a kid, like you wouldn't have caught me dead in a skirt. I can tolerate a skirt now, but I still prefer pants. But like especially when I was a kid, you couldn't get me in a skirt for anything. You couldn't get me in a dress, anything that resembled it. Right? I was very conscious when I was a child of gender norms and gender expectations and how I hated them. And how I hated people assuming that I was a girly girl just because I'm a girl. Right? So you have to understand that my viewpoint on this comes from, of course, my own lived experiences, my own sense of personal identity, being a female who does not identify all that closely with the feminine. This is not to say that the feminine or femininity is bad. It's not. I just don't identify all that closely with it, right? And then, on top of that, let's take into account sort of the media influences that I grew up with. You know, bands like Queen, bands like Alice Cooper, or I say artists, like Alice Cooper, Alice in Chains. If you Google those names and you look at the band name and you look at the members, you're going to see a disconnect when it comes to genders, right? I grew up seeing people sort of flout gender norms or in a sense in one way or another, if not like literally cross-dressed, then at least sort of blend the two, right? Whether it was Annie Lennox having short bright orange hair and red lipstick and wearing a man's suit, or whether it was Prince and his incredibly feminine and androgynous look, or just the glam metal scene, right? The hair metal scene in general, or even moving into the 90s, with grunge rock and all that, and alternative, it wasn't uncommon to see, guys like Chris Cornell or Kurt Cobain or the Red Hot Chili Peppers or the Smashing Pumpkins wearing dresses or skirts or whatnot to perform, right? So, and believe me, various other influences, such as anime or video games, right? Like my favorite character in the KOF games is King, right? The woman in the wine red suit, right? So for all this and more, I don't want to linger on it too much, but for all this and more, it is very difficult, if not impossible, for me to get upset with the initial idea of a woman being referred to by a masculine title in and of itself, especially when we're talking about a character who's like an adaptation of an adaptation of an adaptation, right? It would be different for me if you were taking a character who had always been defined by her femininity, like Storm or Jean Grey, right? Jean Grey used to be known as Marvel Girl, right? She's been a mother, she's been a wife, she's been the object of desire between two men, right? Or you took again Storm, right? The embodiment of Mother Nature, right? Someone who was worshipped as a goddess, somebody um, who worshipped, right, goddesses, right, who typically references goddesses. If you were to take overtly feminine characters like that, or for video games, take like the Sari, right, in Mass Effect, right, distinctly all female race, right, who are are completely unashamed of their femininity, right, and who worship goddesses and are worshipped as goddesses and all this other stuff. Right? If you were to take overtly feminine characters like that, who are defined by their femininity, and suddenly, you know, refer to them in the masculine or masculinize them as characters, then I would probably be upset on its face. But with this, I I'm not. This is not to necessarily say I agree with calling Valkyrie in this case a king or referring to them as King Valkyrie. But if we're talking about like just like visceral reaction upset, you're not gonna find that with me. Not in this case. All this to say, I am entirely too butch. I am entirely too butch to be bothered by the idea of a King Valkyrie, and the king is a woman. I hear King Valkyrie and I think, damn, that's a pretty cool band name. Like if I could actually play an instrument or sing, or could find other women who were musically talented and we didn't kill each other. I would totally, join a band or be in a band called King Valkyrie, a bunch of women. I would totally be like for that. So if you're looking for me as butch as I am, to be sort of bothered on the face, right? Just bothered by the idea in and of itself. That's not me. That's not me. I'm the kid who, when I think I was about 4 years old, maybe 4 or 5, my mother she got me a Barbie doll, little black Barbie doll, for my birthday. I tore the doll's head off. I tore the doll's head off and demanded Rock'em Sock'em Robots, right? Of the few, like, geek-related stuff that I have, you'll tend to notice that they're dudes. Metal Gear Ducky. I identify quite strongly with the masculine, right? So, this isn't going to bother me on its face. So, if you were looking for me or expecting me to be upset just by the very idea, the very concept, I'm not. I subverted your expectations in that regard, right? So, there's that. And then, uh, I Love Animation says, even still, in the old days, we didn't have to worry about calling a female a she, her, or a male he, him without triggering people. Even Crimson Podcast, right? Crimson Sin, doing a review for the Owl House, can't even call a bi character a he, since the LGBTQ community gets their pinkies in a twist. Okay, first things first. While I'm admittedly butch, I am not part of the LGBTQ community. Now, I don't know if that's something you assumed. I don't know. I'm not saying you did. I'm not saying you did. I'm just clarifying that I'm not. And I really don't see, at least going by these comments, and again, all I can do is respond to what you've directly said to me. Um, I don't see from what I've read or seen of this what this has to do with the LGBTQ community, personally, right? Plus, that's a sexuality, right? Like where? Let me see here. Right, the whole like the acronym, right? Lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer. The only one that's an actual gender identity is trans, right? Trans male, trans female. So it seems here that you're trying to address two different topics: one of gender identity and gender, or rather, I say sexuality, right? And I agree with you that in the old days, that perhaps we didn't have to worry as much, but there were plenty of people who didn't like gender terms. In fact, in the 90s, it was common to have more gender neutral terms for certain things. For example, there were people who didn't like the term policewoman because they felt that it was demeaning, right? Or that there was no reason to focus on a person's gender in what was seen as sort of like a unisex job, right? It's like, aren't cops effectively doing the same thing, right? So, there was a lot of calls and a lot of movement back in the 90s, for more gendered neutral terms, right? Instead of policeman or policewoman, it's police officer, right? Instead of, stewardess, for example, it's flight attendant, right? So, it's not exactly like the past, the good old days were necessarily always all that good, right? Now, yeah, you could probably in general refer to a person as male or female back in the day without triggering people. But again, with this, at least from my perspective, this is less about gender or gender identity, right? And more about gendered terms or more gendered expectations or gender roles, right? Which change, you know, throughout history and depending on culture, right? So I don't quite understand your contention with the first part. Uh, and as for Crimson Sin doing reviews of the Owl House, right? Crimson is a critic, right? I've seen Crimson's work. I love the Crimson Sin podcast Shiva videos. I haven't seen the Owl House ones because I haven't watched the Owl House, right? But you say here that the Owl House can't even call a bi character a he. Okay, well, we're dealing with two things here then. Bi is bisexual, that's a sexuality. And then he, that's a gender. Those are two different things. And given that, again, I don't watch the Owl House, I haven't watched any reviews from anybody of the Owl House. So I don't even know really what you're talking about here, right? So I really don't see where your argument or contention about the influence of the LGBTQ community really has a place in this particular topic of Valkyrie now being referred to as King Valkyrie. If there was any place for it, it was probably when they said in the last film the character was in that she was suddenly bisexual or something. That I would say was a more overt influence, but I don't really see, at least as of yet, the influence of the LGBTQ agenda or anything like that here. But there's something more that you can share and let me know about. Um, please do. Right, but for this one, I don't really understand your sort of contention or argument here. For me, it's a matter of, does the title make sense, right? I would prefer to know why Valkyrie is being referred to as a king or being given the masculine royal title of king rather than just be upset about it. I don't have enough information at this time to decide for myself whether or not it's a good or a bad thing. I just know it's a thing. And it's a thing that, again, due to my own personal views and sense of identity, I am not immediately offended by, as some others seem to be. And to be fair, you are totally entitled to your disagreement. Totally entitled to your offense. I'm not even going to say that you're wrong. I don't know. I don't know either way at the moment. All I know is that I'm not as riled up as some others seem to be. And when it comes to your comments, I don't quite understand your your argument. So if there's more that you want to add or want to say, you can certainly leave another comment or you can comment in the video if you want. I would love to continue this conversation, but on its face, I really don't understand what your argument is here. And I want to be clear. I'm not trying to like be contentious or anything like that. I really just don't understand what you're arguing here. It seems like one part is like the LGBTQ part, which is mainly sexuality, and then the other one is about gender identity. But my thing is more about gendered roles or expectations or titles, which to me are I see where they sort of intersect, but I still view them as different things, right? A gendered title and a gendered role and your gender identity are not the same always. Again, I'm a masculine woman. My personality or elements of my personality are at odds with my biological gender. It doesn't mean I want to be a man. It just means that I'm a butch ass female. so so there is that. That's the best answer I can give you. I don't know about any heat. I don't want any heat. I don't want any smoke. So there's that. But let me find Crimson's comment here. I may have to pause this for a moment while I search. Let me go through it. All right. So I found Crimson's comment. Right. So Crimson quote tweeted me and said, "But what about? Oh, sorry. But what happened to Girl Boss and Slay Queen? Seriously, we're taking away her gender, but why? Because women are weak. Women are weak. Only men can rule. It seems rather sexist." Here's the thing. I don't necessarily think you're wrong here, Crimson. I just don't quite know what the reasoning behind calling her a king is. And for me, I'd rather wait until I find out what that reasoning is, whether from a creative perspective or from the films. Because again, this version of Valkyrie is the MCU version of Valkyrie. Let's not forget that we're talking about a character who's already sort of a facsimile of a facsimile of a facsimile, right? Because the Marvel comics, right, play fast and loose with Norse mythology anyway. That's why Thor is a hunky, muscular blonde, and not, the more, beer belly, sort of haggard looking redhead that he's typically depicted as in Norse mythology, right? So there's already a lot of alteration, right? Marvel never necessarily stayed all that uh, close to Norse myth in as regards a lot of their uh, Norse characters, right? And then, right, we're talking about the film version of Valkyrie, right? Who is a grand departure, just on her face, from the Valkyrie in the comics because of the fact that they cast Tessa Thompson, who is black, right? Who's an African American, when Valkyrie typically is, white, or what we would define as white, right? Blonde hair, Nordic looking. So, and again, this is sort of, leads to my point about me not really being able to be upset about this. Again, it's a facsimile of a facsimile. They're changing something that was already fairly inaccurate to begin with, right? And then I think in the last film that they had her in or whatever, they mentioned that their version of this character was gay. So it's like, or rather I say bisexual, I think it was. So for me, it's like, okay, they're making another change that, um, is different from the comics, right? Where I think we're all aware by this point that, especially when it comes to Disney, Marvel, and what is the MCU as they're being called, right? Phase 4, they don't care about the lore. They didn't really care about the lore in the first place, and they don't care about the lore now. We've seen film after film after film from them, right? Captain Marvel, for example, right? The literal Marvel, right? That was supposed to be the origin of Carol's powers. In that film, they gender flipped the character to be female. So for me, it's like I cannot get mad when this, for me, is not unexpected, right? They're following in the tradition that's already been established by previous films. So again, if you're looking for me to get mad on its face, I can't do that here. I'm sorry. Right? Now, I can understand the concerns about taking away her gender. But again, the question is, why is she being referred to as a king? Right? We don't know the storyline reasons for that as of yet. Or if you do know, please let me know, because I didn't see anything explaining the storyline reasons for it. Even the comicbook.com article that was in the original post give any storyline reason as to why she's being referred to um, by a masculine royal title of king. One would imagine that, especially since she's supposed to be the king of Asgard, why she's being given any human royal titles at all, king or queen. Those are titles for human royalty. Isn't she supposed to be a god, or at least something beyond human, right? You don't refer to an angel, for example, as a king or a queen, usually, right? You refer to them as an angel. You don't refer to a god or a goddess typically as a king, right? Those are human titles. You refer to them as a god, right? It would be like if you're playing Mortal Kombat, right? And suddenly people started referring to Raiden as King Raiden. It's like, he's not a king. He's a thunder god. He's the god of the elements. He's the protector god of Earth, right? So, if I have any questions, it's more about why she has any title that would be more in line with human royalty, right? Like if she were king or queen of Midgard, which I think is supposed to be Earth, right? The Earth, the mortal realm. Then I could kind of understand. But she's supposed to be the king of Asgard, from what I was reading. So why would she have a earthly royal title for a realm that is supposed to be above and beyond Earth, right? I I just don't get it personally on that level, right? To me, it's like, especially with that character, it's like, how dare you call me a king? I am a god, right? Or I am a goddess. That's what I'm thinking. If there's any like oddity for me, it's that, right? But as regards again this whole king thing, again, you might be right. Maybe they are trying to erase women. Maybe they are. I don't know. If they are, then I think they're wrong because there's nothing wrong with being referred to as a queen, right? You don't necessarily need a masculine title to rule, and one would argue that you know even when you have a king queen type of monarchy, right? Who's really the one in power? The king, who stands before the people and makes laws and proclamations, or the wife he's sleeping next to every night who's whispering things in his ear, right? Now, naturally, I don't think women are weak. I think women are incredibly strong. And I think that there's a room for very feminine women, and there's room for very masculine women who maybe don't identify with feminine titles, right? And I think there's room for in between. I want to see all types. But again, I can't make the call, for me and for myself at least, right? Of good or bad because I don't know what's motivating this as of yet. Maybe it's the fact that she's a warrior woman, right? Maybe the idea is that she has to sort of take on this masculine role and with that a masculine title. Maybe it's just people being silly in Hollywood. It wouldn't be surprising, right? So that's what I have to say about that. Could it be sexist? Maybe. You might be right. Is it sexist? I can't make that call yet. And then I said here, like I said, I've just been explaining for several minutes that I want to hear and see their reasoning. And again, I'm not terribly bothered by the whole gender bending element. And then Crimson says it's not gender bending. She's always been a woman. Is that they are calling her a king instead of a queen? Make more sense to use a gender neutral term like ruler or leader. Why erase the female word? Let me explain what I mean by gender bending here. I don't mean gender bending in necessarily the sense of denying one's gender or trying to necessarily to pass as the other gender. What I mean is taking on roles, right? Or in this case, titles that typically are not associated with your gender. For example, Valkyrie is a warrior, right? Warriors in the history of most societies are male. So naturally, a woman taking on a man's role is going to be seen differently, right? It's a distinctly masculine thing to do in most cultures, and you would be stepping outside of your gender role if you are a woman and you go out and you fight, right? And again, I love my warrior women. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that it could be that type of situation. She has stepped out of her traditional role into something else. All right? And she has to take on a male persona or a male title to do that. Not the perfect example or comparison, but think of the Ballad of Mulan, right? She lived in a very, uh, gender specific, let's say, society that said men are warriors, men go out to war. So what did she do? She took on the persona of a man to go fight in a war, to protect the man, to protect her father. It could be that. It could be a dozen things. I don't know. And that's the point. Until I don't know, I can't make a call. Right? And again, even if they did use a gender neutral term, wouldn't that be effectively be erasing the female term as well? If you're not using it, doesn't that erase it too? Or at least put it in the background? So there's an argument there that using a gender neutral term wouldn't be any better because the term of queen still wouldn't be used. You would just be using a term that is unisex. Does that really solve the problem that you seem to have here, which is the belief that this is sexist? The only way to address it, if your belief is that they are trying to erase femininity, would be to use the feminine term. And maybe in time they will. Maybe they'll change their mind and they'll call her Queen Valkyrie instead. I wouldn't mind. I'm just not bothered at this point either way. But you're certainly entitled to your opinion, Crimson. And if you want to respond, just like with I Love Animation, if you want to respond in the comments or whether it be on Twitter or whether it be in the video or you want to make your own video as a response, whatever, you know, I'm perfectly open to, criticism and respectful debate. I've got no problem with that. But this is just the way I see things. You could be right. But I just don't have enough information yet to make the call. And again, as I've explained for the past 30 minutes, I am not the type to be instantaneously offended by a non traditional masculine leaning woman when I am just that. So that's how I feel about it. I'm in the middle. I am neither all that jazzed nor all that upset. Maybe my opinion will change as more information comes out. But as it is, I'm in the middle. I'm not bothered. I'm unbothered. Either way, I'm unbothered. But anyhow, um, that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day or night wherever you are.